If you've ever thought, I'd be fine if I just had a little more money, but the problems keep multiplying anyway, this video will explain why. Because being broke isn't just stressful, it's expensive. And today I'm going to break down the math that makes life cost more when you have less. Quick disclaimer, this is educational, not financial advice. Here's the idea: being poor comes with penalties. Not moral penalties, mathematical ones. Fees, higher prices, worse financing, more breakdowns, more emergencies. People call this the poverty premium. I call it what it feels like, the system charging you extra for having a low balance. Let's start with a scene you already know. You're driving your car, not brand new, not fancy, but it starts, it runs, it gets you to work. Then it happens, the check engine light. That little orange icon lights up and your stomach drops because you're not thinking about engines, you're thinking about money. Now meet Brian, broke Brian. Brian's driving a beat-up sedan. The light dings, he glances at the dashboard, then does what a lot of people do. He checks his banking app at the next red light. Balance, $42. Just pause on that for a second. What would you do with a check engine light and $42? Brian does the only free thing available. He turns up the radio to drown out the rattling sound. Denial is free, repairs are not. And this is where people mislabel what happens next. They call it bad luck. They call it my car hates me. They call it I can never get ahead. But watch the math. Fast forward a couple months, the car dies on the highway. Tow truck minus 200. Transmission repair minus 2,000 because the small warning became a big failure. Missed work shifts minus 300. All in about minus $2,500 from one ignored warning light. And here's the point, this wasn't just bad luck, Brian. This is a math trap. This is the poverty premium, the extra cost you pay when you don't have liquidity. There's a simple way to understand this. It's called the boots theory. Two people need boots. Same rain, same snow, same sidewalks. The difference isn't character, it's cash. Rich Richard can afford one good pair. He buys a solid pair of boots for $50. They last 10 years. Total cost over the decade, $50. Broke Brian can't afford $50 up front. So he buys the $10 boots, the cardboard boots, the ones that fall apart in a year. $10 times 10 years, that's $100. At the end of the decade, Brian spent double and his feet were wet the whole time. That's the poverty premium in one picture. When you have money, you buy quality once. When you don't, you buy cheap repeatedly and you pay more for the privilege. And it's bigger than boots. Liquidity changes your cost of living. When Rich Richard stumbles financially, he lands on a pillow: savings, good credit, flexibility, the ability to handle surprises. When broke Brian stumbles, he hits concrete: late fees, overdrafts, worse interest rates, repairs he can't afford, missed work, more emergencies. So let's get practical. Here are the 4 places the poverty premium shows up the most. First, groceries and bulk buying. Economies of scale aren't just for corporations, they're for households. If you have money up front, you can buy in bulk and pay less per unit. If you don't, you buy small quantities at the worst prices. And the mistake people make here is blaming themselves for spending too much, when the real issue is they can't access the cheaper tier. Because budgeting doesn't magically turn $4 into $50. Here's a simple example: toilet paper. If you have $50, you can buy bulk. Maybe it works out to 50 cents a roll. If you have $4, you buy the tiny pack at the corner store, and it might work out to $1.50 a roll. That's 3 times the unit price for the same product for the same need. So yes, your personal inflation rate can be higher when you're broke because you can't buy ahead. You're always buying right now. And right now is expensive. If you want one small move that matters, pick 3 non-perishables you always use: toilet paper, detergent, rice, pasta, whatever. Then try to get just 2 weeks ahead on one of them. Not forever, not extreme, just enough to stop paying emergency pricing. Second, banking fees. Banks treat you like royalty when you have money and like a criminal when you don't. When your balance is low, tiny timing mistakes become expensive. Your auto pay hits before your paycheck: overdraft. A bill hits twice: overdraft. A gas station pre-authorizes a charge: overdraft. And people start thinking, that's just life. No, that's a system earning money from your stress. Let's do the overdraft math. Say you overdraft by $5, you're short $5. The bank charges you $35, so you paid $35 to borrow $5. That's not a little fee. That's a penalty designed to hurt when you're already down. If somebody on the street offered you a deal like that, you'd walk away. When a bank does it, they call it a service. Here, what you can do this week without becoming a finance nerd. Turn on low balance alerts. Pick a number like 50 or 100. Second, if your bank allows it, turn off overdraft coverage so transactions decline instead of charging you fees. Third, if you can, separate your bill money from your spending money, even if both are small. The goal isn't perfection, it's preventing small mistakes from becoming expensive spirals. Third, the scarcity mindset, the bandwidth tax. Poverty isn't just a lack of cash, it's a lack of breathing room in your brain. When you're constantly doing survival math, rent, food, gas, minimum payments, your brain has less capacity for long-term planning. That's not weakness, that's biology. And there's research suggesting scarcity can reduce cognitive performance in the short term, roughly like missing a night of sleep. Meaning, you're literally trying to make complex decisions while mentally exhausted. So when people say, "Why do broke people make bad choices?" Sometimes the answer is, because they're tired, stressed, and constantly putting out fires. Here's a painfully realistic example. Brian's the type of person who knows cooking at home saves money. But he gets off a long shift, he's stressed, he's thinking about rent, he's thinking about the car noise, and he buys $18 of fast food because it's immediate and requires zero planning. Then that 18 contributes to him being short on an auto pay, which triggers a $35 overdraft. So the fast food wasn't 18, it was 53. That's the poverty premium showing up through bandwidth. If you want to fight this, don't rely on motivation, rely on defaults. One default meal you can make fast. One tiny grocery list you repeat. One day you pay bills. When your brain is tired, you don't rise to your goals, you fall to your systems. Fourth, the asset trap, cars and housing. When you have low liquidity, transportation and housing become minefields because the good options usually require cash, time, credit, and flexibility. And if you don't have those, you pay more. With cars, it looks like this. You buy what you can afford today, not what's cheapest to own. You get stuck with unreliable transportation, expensive repairs, and sometimes ugly financing. Example numbers. Someone buys a $4,000 car, but over time, with repairs and bad terms, they end up paying $15,000 total across a couple years. Because breakdowns cost money, towing costs money, missed work costs money, and cheap becomes expensive. Meanwhile, someone with liquidity can buy a more reliable car, maintain it, get a better interest rate if they finance, and avoid the constant repair spiral. Housing has its own trap. Renting isn't a moral failure. Sometimes renting is the right move. But the math is harsh. Rent is money you pay every month that doesn't build ownership. You're covering the landlord's costs and profit. And when moving is expensive, application fees, deposits, time off work, trucks, people get stuck. They can't easily shop around. They can't easily negotiate. They can't easily leave. That's what low liquidity does. It removes your ability to choose. And here's a simple rule that helps more than it sounds like it should. Avoid new monthly payments while you're building your buffer. Not forever. Not as a personality. Just until you stop paying emergency pricing for everything. Now let's rewind the story because this is where the whole video becomes useful. Back to the beginning. Check engine light comes on, same car, same day, same Brian. But this time, Brian has $1,000 set aside, a liquidity buffer. He checks his bank account, he sighs, he's annoyed. He still doesn't feel rich. But he takes the car in immediately. Cost $300 as an example. The small problem gets fixed before it becomes catastrophic. No tow truck, no transmission, no missed shifts. So instead of losing $2,500, he spends $300. Net difference, about $2,200 saved because he had liquidity. That's why the first step to building wealth isn't picking the perfect stock, it's building a buffer. Because if you're constantly paying the poverty premium, investing becomes a side quest while your main character fights fires all day. So let's land this. Wealth isn't just defense, making more money. It's defense, stopping the leaks. The system charges you extra when you have low liquidity, higher unit prices, harsher fees, worse financing, more expensive emergencies, more forced urgency. And the most important mindset shift is this: stop treating money as spending power and start treating it as problem-solving power. A buffer doesn't make you feel rich, it makes you harder to break. If you're tired of paying double for everything, subscribe to Steve Invests. And if you want the perfect follow-up, watch the next video on why earning more makes you broke, because that's how you buy your way out of the spiral, one boring win at a time.